right, my people, welcome back. One of Igboho'S aides, who was just released, narrates everything that happened. A must watch. All right, my people, the news and details. According to one of Igboho'S aides, Onolapo Ademola, who was just being released from the DSS custody, he had narrated everything that happened in Igboho'S house on that day. And then, thank God, this is coming from the right source. He saw the whole event the way it happened. All right, my people, according to him, he says DSS soldiers brought three herbalists, killed five cats, arrested one thinking Igboho transformed during midnight raid. All right, and this had been said by Fred Aide Ademola Onalapo. Onalapo Ademola is one of the 12 associates of Yoruba Nation agitator Sunday Adeyemo aka Sunday Igboho, who were recently released on bail from the custody of the Department of State Services. In this interview with Kayode Oyero, Ademola narrates how the secret police raided the Ibadan residence of Igboho in a Gestapo style in the midnight of July 1st, 2021, killing two associates and then arresting him and then other Igboho's aides. Well, according to what had happened, according to him, he said, well, I am Prince Onalapo Ademola by name. I am 32 years old. I am a solar inverter expert. I deal in land and in real estate and then also have an online television. Well, I am his son and then a follower. I am the director of his foundation, Sunday Adeyemo Foundation, for the past 2 to 3 years now. I also happened to be one of his media aides before we started the journey of Yoruba Nation. Well, a question has been thrown to him that how many years have you known Chief Sunday Igboho and then have been working with him? Well, he replied by saying, well, I have known him for over 10 years. Can you narrate what happened in the midnight of July 1st, 2021 at Igboho's residence in the Soka area of Ibadan? All right, he replied by saying that, well, it's an unforgettable day in the history of the Yoruba people because when everyone else was greeted Happy New Month, we were greeted in a way we never expected. We were greeted as if we were in a battlefield. We woke up to find ourselves in that mess. It was a misuse of power by the present government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Well, I have been minding my speech about the event of that day because a lot of us are still suffering from psychological trauma because what happened that day alone can take one's life. All right, so how did it happen? Hmm. Well, according to him, he says, well, my house was not far from Chief Sunday Igboho's house, and then being a father to me, I have access to him, and then he has to me. He did call to see me anytime to run errands for him. I was in my personal house around 12 a.m., but I had a message to pass across to him which I could not deliver by phone. I moved from my house to his residence at exactly 12 a.m. and then met with him. We discussed till around 1 a.m. and then were outside with some of our people till around 1:30 a.m. In his house, I have a chalet he allocated to me as one of his associates. At exactly 1:30 a.m., he moved into his building. Others retreated into their own apartment, and then I also moved into my own. But at exactly 1:35 a.m., I started hearing gunshots and then wondered what was happening. My chalet is directly facing the main gate, and then I opened the window to peep to see what was happening outside. To my greatest shock, I couldn't see anybody, but I heard sporadic gunshots. Whenever I heard fire, they would shoot at the building. Well, as a Muslim, I started reciting different verses of the Quran, believing it might be the end of my life. While still peeping through the window, I could see two DSS personnel inside the house. They came through the fence because they could not force their way in through the main gate from outside. So some of them jumped the fence and then came in to open the gate for the others. When they opened the gate, I saw that they were dressed in black and were putting on helmets. They were dressed like they were on a battleground facing Boko Haram. I heard them calling themselves "Come in, Tutu." I immediately woke the boy that was with me and then told him that we needed to start preparing for our burial because there was no way to escape. There were more than 100 personnel inside the building, comprising the DSS and soldiers. They shot sporadically everywhere. When they got to any chalet or any of the rooms, they fired directly. I started praying, and then I am thankful that God saved my life. The shooting continued for 3 hours. When they got to my chalet, I opened the door for them. They mashed on my head on the floor. I had collected around 300,000 naira from Chief Sunday Igboho, which I wanted to use to buy something the following morning. One of the soldiers picked up the money. They demanded my gun, and I told them, "Do I look like someone who can shoot? Do I look like someone who can operate a gun?" They mashed my head till they mashed my head still, and then I was handcuffed. Then they took me to the gate to lie down there with others. At the gate, to my greatest shock, I saw one of my very good brothers, Sahid Oladams Adogan, the chief executive officer of Oladams Motors in Oshogbo, in a pool of blood. Likewise, afar, we were still together around 12:30 a.m., but the two of them were already gunned down. After we had been handcuffed and then laid on the floor, the security operatives started destroying the vehicles in the compound, threatening to burn down the house and then saying all sorts of things. They also made a roll call of the people in the house. That was what happened, but to the glory of God, yeah, we are today. Hmm. Well, according to the question, it says DSS spokesman Peter Afanaya said Igboho men engaged the operatives in a gun duel before you guys were overpowered. After two of Igboho's aides were gunned down, who among you were firing at the DSS men? This question had been thrown, and then he answered by saying nothing of such happened. Nobody retaliated. Nobody exchanged gunshots with them. You know, the Nigerian military, if anybody had retaliated by exchanging gunshots, you know what would have happened. Those they were killed didn't exchange gunshots with them. Security agent Afar was an innocent man. He was killed in the waiting room of Chief Sunday Igboho while he was praying. He was a cleric and then he could not see. He was blind. On getting to the waiting room, the security operatives just fired straight and gunned him down. Also, Adogon did not in any way exchange gunshots with them. He was shot in the bathroom where he was hiding. Okay, what about the narrative that the security agents used a mortar to smash Adogon's head when he refused to die after being shot? Nothing of such happened, he replied. He was shot in the bathroom. Okay, as an eyewitness to the event of that midnight, exactly how many people died? He replied by saying two people died, Alpha and Adegon. Another question, where are their remains? He answered by saying, well, when we were being taken to the DSS office in Abuja from Ibadan, we got to Ekiti together with the two corpses at the DSS office in Ekiti. We noticed that they took the corpses of Adagan and Alpha away in a Hilux vehicle. So I believe their remains are with the DSS. Hmm. All right, another question. He says, how many of you were arrested? He replied by saying, well, they arrested 22 people, 12 males, and then 10 females. When we got to Ekiti at the entrance of the DSS office, they freed 9 of the ladies after asking everyone who is Lady K. So they only took Lady K with the men to Abuja out of the 12 men. One of us was a police officer, an escort of Adagan. The officer was not paraded in Abuja. Instead, 12 of us, including Lady K, were paraded. As the officer been released? Okay, yes, he was released before us. Okay, well, another question says there were reports that the DSS picked up some cats found in Igboho'S house, CCTV brain box, among other things. What are the things the DSS took from Igboho'S house that night? He replied by saying, well, they took gold money, our phones, which are still with them. They went away with the CCTV and then one of the cats after killing about 4 or 5 cats. They went away with a big MP3. They went away with a lot of things. They went away with the cat. The living Chief Sunday Igboho turned to the cat. The DSS also claimed in a statement that they recovered some guns and the ammunition from Igboho's house that night. How true is this? Well, he replied that, well, the DSS are in a better position to explain where they got that from, but there was a police officer in the house and he had a gun. Maybe they took the gun of the police officer, he replied. All right, another question says, well, was Igboho at home during the raid? He replied by saying, yes, he was at home. The DSS saw him. They can't deny that because that night they came with 3 herbalists after shooting at so many corners of the house all of a sudden they couldn't see him again. So they believed he was hiding, not knowing he was in the building. Chief Sunday Igboho is not an ordinary man. He is the Akoni Odua of Yoruba land and a real son of Odudua. When the DSS could not find him, they brought in their herbalist and they started chanting incantation, wanting him to come back. The herbalist later told the DSS that Baba Igboho had turned to a cat. That was when they started killing the cat. I believe they know he has metaphysical powers. That was why they came in with herbalists to get him at all cost. But God was not ready to put his life in the hands of the DSS. All right. Another question says, how did you recognize the herbalist? Were they donning amulets and then charms? He replied by saying, well, they wore ordinary clothes, not traditional attire, but when the DSS could not find Chief Sunday Igboho, they called them in and then the herbalist started chanting incantations. Hmm. What is the number of security operatives that came for the raid? He replied by saying, well, the DSS operatives were more than 20, and most of them were from Oyo, while the soldiers were more than 200. I could count about 87 vehicles when they taking us away. They came with ambulances too, believing they were going to a war zone. All right, how did you know most of the DSS operatives were from Oyo State? He replied by saying, well, after they took us from the house, the number of DSS operatives that followed us to Abuja was reduced drastically. Were the police also involved in the raid? No, only the Nigerian army and the DSS came that day. Okay, if there were these many security operatives during that raid, as you have said, how was Sunday Igboho able to escape while you, his aides, could not? He answered by saying, well, I am not fortified with anything, but I believe in the Almighty God. Chief Sunday Igboho is a human being like everyone, but he is a special creature. He is a special creature. No one can face what he faced that night and then escape. There was a lady in one of their vehicles that was saying, get him dead or alive. Well, from Ibadan, you were whisked to Abuja the same day. You were arrested. Can you briefly narrate your ordeal while with the secret police? All right, he answered by saying, well, I was there for 62 days. It was part of the sacrifice, no going back. It was dehumanizing to be in custody without seeing the sun or the moon for months, being maltreated, given food that a dog could not eat, sleeping on bare floor for 62 days, eating in the same place where I defecated, the same place where I urinated, the same place where I observed my prayers. We were given 20 naira cowbell milk and then a loaf of bread of less than 50 naira to eat per day. There was no access to lawyers, no access to family members. It was hell. It was a terrible experience which I do not wish for even my enemy. All right, another question says, well, in the DSS custody, what were the offenses the secret police said you committed? Well, he answered by saying, well, offense, even if I had committed an offense, is coming in the dead of the night to kill us, the solution. I did not commit any offense, he said. Another question says, when you were interrogated in the DSS custody, what were the questions they asked you? Well, he replied by saying, well, they asked me personal questions and then my purpose of being in Igboho's house. They also asked for my bank account, Facebook name, my village address. They asked me a lot of questions. They asked me to tell them how long I had known Chief Sunday Igboho, and I told them I cannot disown him no matter the situation. All right, another question says, were you kept in an underground cell in DSS custody? He replied by saying, well, the first place we were kept for the first 2 days in the DSS custody was an underground cell where, if anything happened, we couldn't know. From there, we graduated to another cell where we had access to Fulani Hausa detainees who don't understand English language. Some of them were suspected bandits and Boko Haram members. There were others who were not Hausa but suspected IPOP members. Okay, another question says, how many detainees were kept in a single cell with you? He replied by saying, three. It's a small cell with useless settings for three people. One had to sleep by bending. Were you kept with your associates or strangers? He replied by saying, yes. We, the Igboho'S 12, were scattered into various cells. I was detained with Kanuri and an Hausa suspect. We didn't understand our individual languages. All that bound us together was Muslim Salat. We couldn't communicate. It was hell. It got to a time that those of us arrested in Chief Igboho's house couldn't sleep at night. We prayed all through. The Muslims observed Tajud midnight prayers while the Christians held vigils. All right, how did the Igboho 12 pray together when you were in separate cells? He answered by saying, well, we prayed by raising our voices, both Christians and then Muslims. We shouted to communicate when it was time for prayers. Of course, we recognized our different voices. Okay. All right. In all of this, do you have any regret at all? He answered by saying, well, I suffered for my fatherland and then I want my people to be liberated. This is a tyrannical government that has no respect for the rule of law. Okay, another question says, have you undergone any medical treatment after your release? Okay, and he replied by saying, well, I would have died if I hadn't undergone any medical treatment after my release. You can never be in DSS custody and then come back without seeking medical attention. How do you feel that you have been released on bail? Well, there is nothing like freedom, even if you don't have money, he replied, but can move around. You should be grateful to God for that. So I am grateful to God that I have been released. Well, I have a lot of questions coming in and it's getting more interesting. Okay, well, another question says some 3 weeks after your arrest, your boss Igboho was also apprehended at an airport in neighboring Cotonou in Benin Republic on July 19, 2021, and then has since been behind bars. How do you feel about this development? Okay, it is a sad development for us, his followers, that Chief Igboho, a man of honor and a philanthropist par excellence, was arrested, but there is nothing we could do about it. Hmm. All right, so another question says, you claimed Igboho is not an ordinary man, which was why he was able to escape the DSS raid in Ibadan, but he was subsequently apprehended in Cotonou. What do you think went wrong? He answered by saying, well, God understands everything. All right, do you still believe in Igboho despite all that has happened? He replied by saying, I am 100% with him. All right, do you still believe in Yoruba Nation agitation? He says, well, no going back. The struggle continues. All right, my people. It's been a long one. All right, oh, and this had been said so interesting and so touching. It's so serious. Well, this had been said by one of Igboho's aides, Onolapo Ademola, who was released of recent amongst the 12 Igboho detained aides by the DSS. And he had been able to narrate the whole ordeal, how it happened. My people, you can now understand that it's not an easy thing, it's not an easy task. These people have actually sacrificed a lot. Well, I want to say very good congratulations to them anyway, because God has been on their side. Because if not for God, you wouldn't have been alive. All right, my people, that has been it on this one. What more can we say? Meanwhile, let me have more take from you on this, my people, and remember to subscribe for more updates. Thanks and God bless.